All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Golf and Politics. Today we're going to talk about the Solheim Cup. The Solheim Cup is a biennial competition between women professional golfers from the United States versus Team Europe. And it's just like the Ryder Cup. And Team Europe has had the cup since 2019, but this year the event was held at the prestigious Trent Jones Golf Club in Gainesville, Virginia. The golf course that gets more discussion than any other golf course on our podcast is RTJ, because Rob Elsworth is a member of RTJ, and many of our guests that we've had on the show have been members at RTJ or have connections to the club. So, Rob, tell us first and foremost, why did RTJ want to host the Solheim Cup in the first place, and what goes into hosting such a prestigious event like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, the Solheim Cup it has a global audience. And we've been wanting to host more ladies events. We hosted the Rolex Junior Championship a year or two ago for the AJGA, so the best high school girl golfers in the United States. And, I was pleased to play a practice round with them, and that was incredible. And then bringing in the Solheim Cup, which is the best ladies in the world. It's a type of event that, one, is good for the game of golf. I think the Solheim Cup particularly brings a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. They're a ton of fun. And our club was built with the intention of holding big international events. We hosted the first four President's Cups in the United States in 94, 96, 2000, and 2005. We have, I'm guessing around 600 acres of land. So we have plenty of space for hospitality, for media, and for having, 150,000 people come to the event for a week. So, and beyond that, one of the cool things as a spectator, which I got to do this week, is we have a stadium effect on a lot of our holes where there's almost like an amphitheater. So when there was some shaping for the course back in the 1989 and 1990, Robert Trent Jones Sr. really anticipated us holding events. And so from a fan's perspective, you don't have to be right up against the ropes to see the action. You can get close to the action, but even if you're farther away, if the crowd's 10 deep or 15 deep, you're up a slope, so you can really see everything that's going on. And it's just, you could tell it's built for events like this.
So tell me, what goes into preparation? What kind of investment is the club making into the golf course and the facilities to host an event of this magnitude?
Right. So, I mean, a lot of clubs are interested in hosting these events. So you're competing with them. Sometimes the LPGA or the PGA Tour will reach out to you. They might have interest in a particular market. Washington D.C. has a great market for golf, and since Tigers tournament moved to Detroit, we haven't had an annual event in the DC market. So that was a good selling point. Our other selling point, again, is the history with the President's Cups and corporate sponsors and managing an event of this size and magnitude. But, we had a great team. John Coleman and Penny Lee were really our leaders from the club who worked directly with the LPGA in bringing this event to Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. We also had a lot of help from the state of Virginia, Governor Youngkin, and the Virginia is for Lovers advertising campaign. They helped out in a big way. Our team, John Coleman and Penny were great in securing that key endorsement and pickup to get this event. Because really, it's not just an event for RTJ; it's an event for the region. It's a huge tourism draw from all over the world. It's great for restaurants. It's great for hotels. So, and that's part of the sales pitch in getting one of these things to your club is that, we have the ability to facilitate 150,000 people. We have, whether it's in Gainesville or Tyson's Corner or Fairfax or DC itself, We have the hotel rooms, we have the restaurants, we have the hospitality, we have the ability and the infrastructure in place to do this.
Now the course looked immaculate on television, and I know for the last month or so, when you play RTJ and you hit it in the fairway, did you had to play it off of a mat? Is that correct
Yeah.
to protect the fairways? But it worth it. I mean, the course just looked, perfect, pristine condition.
Yeah, kudos to Scott Furlong, our superintendent. If you want more information on this, Scott was just a guest on the Fried Egg podcast, Andy Johnson, and they do a really terrific job going in depth on some of these issues. But our course has always been in great shape. Every weekend you go out there. But what's really exceptional about this is one, yes, the club for the last 2 months decided to off of par threes and in the fairways, first cuts and approaches to hit off of small mats. I mean, I chose to just take my ball when I hit it in the fairway and throw it in the rough so I could practice real shots. So I didn't really hit off the mats, but there were no divots. And the reason why there was 2 months is that when the soil reaches over 80 degrees in temperature, grass starts to die. And so basically, you're managing the death of the grass once the soil gets to that temperature. And if somebody took a divot on July 15th, it would take 2 months to regrow that divot. And so we did it exactly 2 months before the tournament started. There wasn't a divot in the fairway. And one of the great things about, the Ryder Cup, the Solheim Cup, the President's Cup, as far as hosting the tournament, is they don't beat up your golf course. There's only 24 golfers. So you're really looking at 8 matches a day, um, and on Sunday 12 matches. So they're not really beating up your course at all. When we hosted Tiger Woods event in 2015, we had a full field of 125. And the men take bigger divots, and after 6 days of them using your practice facilities, they beat the hell out of them. I mean, you almost have to resod it. But with this event, they leave and there's more damage done to the rough where the galleries are walking.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, over the next week or so, the LPGA will be, sort of breaking down all of the grandstands and the build out that we had. And then our team will be replacing any sod that needs to be replaced. They'll essentially just cut it out and they'll lay down fresh sod, and it'll look like by next week it'll look like nobody was there when 150,000 people were trampling through there for a week.
Well, and I tell you, in holes 17 and 18 really didn't get a lot of play. I mean, there were so many matches that were completed before they even got to those holes the first few days. Those holes played amazing. It was awesome drama yesterday watching the singles get to those holes. But real quick, back up for a second. I was unaware. This is just a history thing for me. I was unaware that the first four Presidents Cups were played at RTJ. What's the history of that, and when the Presidents Cup started, why was it at RTJ for the first four events?
Right. So, a little history on the club. Our two founders, um, Bobby Russell and Ernest Ransom. Ernest Ransom was president of Pine Valley, which is the world number one course, or at least USA number one. And Bobby Russell, who was president of Baltusrol, which is a top 50 club outside of New York City. And they decided they wanted to build a club that was their own and that would host international tournaments, have an international membership. They didn't know where and they didn't know who they wanted to design it. Robert Trent Jones Sr., who was probably maybe the most famous architect at the time, had been flying overhead to look at a different property, and he saw our land, which is a peninsula with about 4 miles of coastline on Lake Manassas, that has no homes on it, and it just sort of you know, jets in and out of Lake Manassas, and he ran into Bobby Russell and Ernest Ransom and said, "Hey, I've got the perfect piece of land for you. It's aesthetically perfect. Um, it's untouched, and it's right outside of Washington, D.C. And it's about 15 to 20 miles from the Dulles International Airport. It would be perfect for international events. So they hired him. He built the course, and at the opening ceremonies, it didn't have a name. And he spoke to the founding members and said, "Look, I've designed 400 courses around the world in every time zone, and this one is my baby. It's the best that I've designed." And he's really one of the key guys that influenced the current Augusta National that we know. He flipped the two nines. He added the water hazards on 11. He totally built number 16 as we know it today. Um, and when he said that, the members got together and said, "Let's name the club after him."
Wow, that's
So it
cool.
became the Robert Trent Jones Club. And they knew they wanted to host international events. And we've had the former PGA Tour commissioner as a member. And so this venue had been selected. And we were as much a part of the impetus to create the President's Cup in the first place. And so, because there was a void, we played the Ryder Cup against Europe, but we had some of the most famous golfers in the world at the time, Greg Norman, being that. And it's like, well, how can you have a Ryder Cup with the best players in the world and you don't have Greg Norman and you don't have all the guys from other countries that aren't part of Europe or the US? And so they thought that this was going to be another Ryder Cup event that would, showcase it. And being right outside of DC, being called the President's Cup, uh, Bill Clinton, our first co-chairs in '94 were President Clinton and former President George H.W. Bush, both of whom would become members of the club. Uh, President Clinton hosted the first President's Cup team at the White House and invited Robert Trent Jones Sr. And this is a cool story I'll try to tell quickly, but uh, a Secret Service guy tapped Trent Jones on the shoulder and said, "The president would like to see you in the Oval Office." So he went over there, and Bill Clinton had a pitch in mind. And he said that Eisenhower had built the White House putting green on the South Lawn, and that Nixon had let it grow over, and that he would like Trent Jones to design a new putting green. And he had some ideas in mind. And the putting green Clinton had in mind ended up being too close to where One lands, and kind of in too prominent of a place on the property. And so I'm sorry here, I lost you for a second. There we go. Apologize. And so they moved it over closer to the Oval Office where it is today. And Clinton wanted a bunker, a sand trap, on the south side of the putting green. And the Secret Service warned Trent Jones not to do that because the president blades his bunker shots, and they didn't want him blading bunker shots into the White House and tripping security on it. So there are no bunkers on the current one, but Trent Jones built the green, and to this day, RTJ's interns take care of the green,
Oh, that's great.
and they do all the punching and fertilizing and all the important stuff, and then the White House grounds crew mows it.
Fantastic. Okay, hey Rob. I mean, so many great things about the present or the Solheim Cup this weekend. In recent years, at these events, whether it's the Ryder Cup, the President's Cup, the Solheim Cup, one thing that makes these events so incredible is the atmosphere and the energy of the first tee box, especially on the Friday morning of the event. Unfortunately, there's a blemish to this Solheim Cup because the grandstands weren't full on Friday morning for the start of the competition. Can you explain what happened with the buses and how frustrating was that for those in attendance?
Yeah, no, it certainly was. And, it's unfortunate because, you get to the end of the day, and you and I both work in politics and deal with media and perceptions reality. And so the sad thing about day one was that all the stories were about the buses and the logistical hurdles of getting the fans in on time instead of how great the ladies played on Team USA and how awesome the course was. So that was frustrating. But even more importantly than that, there were thousands of fans who were inconvenienced. Basically, the LPGA was responsible for transportation and security related issues. they only had two buses going back and forth, which is just insane. And I say this as myself. I don't speak for the club. I mean, I was pleased that the LPGA CEO came on and took ownership of the issue. I mean, so just to give everybody an idea of how this works, the fans were told to park at the Jiffy Lube Live amphitheater. So it's a concert amphitheater that's a few miles from the course. You couldn't take a ride share like Uber or Lyft or walk into our property because Lake Manassas is a private community. And so when you go through the first set of security, you go to the left to go to RTJ, and we kind of have one half of the lake, and then to the right is another development of like really big homes that have private security. So you had to come in on the buses in order to get in. I had valet parking because I'm a member. And so I was blissfully unaware of what was going on with the buses. But when I got to the tournament, the crowds were really small and the first tee was small. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, this is supposed to be one of the coolest events. Where are all the people? And I started getting text messages from friends around the country who knew more about what was going on with the parking than I did. And then it started to make sense. But like, there were people stranded over there for hours. And to make matters worse, like the porta johns that were over there were locked. And so
Oh, jeez.
you had people there waiting for hours to take a bus. By the afternoon, they were able to go from two buses to 50 buses. So for the afternoon matches, the grandstands were full. Everybody was excited. President Obama was there. A lot of dignitaries were there. And it felt like the Solheim Cup, and it was just incredible. And then the weekend, everything went off without a hitch. But you're right, that first morning, you got to get the details right. And like when someone makes a mistake like that, look, they owned up to it. They'll learn not to do that again. But it did put a damper on the beginning of the tournament, and it was a big distraction for the players. Luckily, our girls went out and kicked some ass.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did. That was frustrating, and I'm really saddened that a lot of people had to go through that.
Well, I want to get to the ass kicking because I mean there was some incredible golf to watch all weekend long. So we'll get to that and close up with that. But you mentioned President Obama. I mean there was some amazing video and photography that came out with Obama on the first tee. First of all, he's a member at RTJ, plays twice a week. I believe you told me as a 2 time a week standing tee time.
Hmm.
What was his presence like on Friday out there? Because I get this sense about him that he's entered this area. So was former President George W. Bush, where they clearly had plenty of haters while in office. They had, hard-fought elections. The country was kind of divided, but now that they're out of office, 8 years for Obama now almost, and 16 years for President Bush, that they've become elder statesmen of our country and much more popular post-presidency than they were during their presidency. Do you get that same feeling about Obama? Was it electric? What was his charisma like
Uh,
on that first tee on Friday?
he was awesome, and he's a great member, of the club. As is President Bush. President Bush lives in Dallas, so I don't think he gets back to RTJ too often. But he and his brothers Neil and Marvin are both members, and I've had a chance to meet President Bush on a few occasions, related to golf and unrelated to golf. I worked for him briefly in 2004. Super nice guy, loves the game of golf, big supporter of it. A lot of people don't know that the Walker Cup, which is the biggest amateur team type Ryder Cup, is named after Walker of the George Walker Bush, family. So the Walker side of it was his grandfather is named after him. So the Bushes have always been big supporters. Bill Clinton's a member at RTJ. He loves the game of golf. I don't think he plays as much anymore, but he used to come to the events. And Barack Obama, I mean, like you said, I can't tell you which days and what tee times for security reasons I'd get yelled at. But just know he's out there. He likes to play 36 in a day, which is impressive. Um, and takes lessons at the club. His security detail.
Does Mike give him lessons? Is that
Yeah,
who
yeah.
coaches?
So
That's awesome.
he's worked with Mike McGettrick, my
Friend
pro,
of, friend of the program, Mike McGettrick.
friend of the program, and Mike really raves about the president's work ethic and how much he just is passionate about the game. And I will say, as a member, when he came and visited as president, like he would get swarmed for selfies and pictures, and he'd take them all. And now I think everybody has their selfie, so he's able to go enjoy himself finally. But he has a really small footprint when he's there on a regular day, unlike when he was sitting president. He has a smaller security detail, X number of carts. Again, I don't want to give too many specifics. I get in trouble. Um, and he always has cart number 44. Uh,
That's
he
great.
like he likes to walk, but he has to take a cart for security reasons in case he has to be, whisked away. Um, but we're a very private club. There are no homes on the course, so he really feels like he can go out there and relax. His detail, they'll wear golf clothes, and you can see an earpiece to a trained eye, but they don't stand out. They're not out there in suits and ties, and they treat the staff and the other members incredibly well. Um, the only president that I don't think, since Bush Senior, when the club opened, that hasn't played is President Trump, but I think that's mostly because he owns Trump National DC, about, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 miles from us, and he plays all of his golf there. But yeah, we've had President Obama, both Bushes, Bill Clinton, and Joe Biden. I don't think Joe Biden has played as president, but he definitely played multiple times as vice president.
Well, I know it's literally 1 month from today, I believe. I'll be at RTJ playing, and I am incredibly fired up for that. And thank you, Rob, for the invite. And
Absolutely.
I look forward to that. So let's get to the golf. The two biggest needle movers in the women's game are Nelly Korda and Charley Hall. I don't think that's disputable, and they both delivered in a big way. If you look at Friday, Nelly Korda had arguably the most dominant round in four ball that we've ever seen. I mean, she actually gained 7.5 strokes on the field. I mean, she was absolutely dominant. Then you turn around on Sunday, and everyone was excited. First match out of the gate, Nelly Korda versus Charley Hall, and Nelly Korda didn't play bad. Charley Hall just dominated. I think she was 7 under through 14 holes and just absolutely stomped Nelly Korda
Yeah.
to set the tone. And it became very competitive. I mean, I'm sitting there watching down the stretch. At one point, we needed a point and a half to win, and we were losing or tied in every match. So great golf. Rob, I know you were there Friday and Saturday. How much did you get to watch of Nelly Korda's incredible round?
Yeah, I watched a good bit of her. I mean, she's just incredible. And to Charlie Hall, I mean, I didn't know much about Charlie Hall before this week. She is cool as hell. Like,
Yeah.
she was borrowing lighters from fans in the gallery.
She's made smoking cigarettes cool again.
I mean, like, yeah. I mean, it's basically in the last 30 years, the only people who you see smoking cigarettes on TV are like Russians, Arabs, and gangsters. And now Charlie Hall, but like, she made me want to smoke a cigarette. She was just ripping cigs out there, um, and was really interacting with the crowd. And I think the one thing that I was really pleased about, the crowd was obviously pro USA. It was obviously a home crowd, but every time the Europeans did something good, the crowd would clap, and they were very respectful to the Europeans. I don't know if you might have seen on TV. I don't know if there were instances where that wasn't the case. I certainly didn't see it, but it seemed to be very respectful out
No,
there
it seemed to be.
of both sides. And Nelly, like, okay, so when they set up a course for a Solheim Cup or a President's Cup, they're not setting it up to make it hard on the players. They're setting it up to entertain the fans. Like, they want holes to be won with birdies and eagles. So
Mm-hmm.
on the par fives, they moved the tees up a little bit so that they were going for them in two. And number 14 was a great example. It's a risk reward par five, and there's water in front of the green, and everybody was going for it. Some people were putting it on the water, some people were putting it close. You saw a lot of eagles. That's what it's all about. And I thought Stacey Lewis did a great job in her requests of RTJ and the LPGA of how they wanted it set up, because the American team she felt were longer and better ball strikers. And so she wanted it set up to favor that. So we had the rough cut pretty low. We had the tees in certain instances back to challenge the Europeans. And then in other instances, like the par fives, we'd move them up so that the Americans had a little bit of an edge. And that's a home court advantage that the Europeans have taken advantage of in the Ryder Cup. And this was the first time where I think she got some say in the input of how the course setup would be. And hey, it worked. But the good news for fans beyond just the US winning is that hey, they made it interesting on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, we wanted the US to win, but we were afraid that if there was a blowout by Saturday night, that fewer people would come out on Sunday, fewer people would watch on TV. But the Europeans made it a hell of a match on Sunday. They actually won the session, and
Well,
you
you talking
know,
about 14. I mean, Charley Hall closed out Nelly Korda by knocking it to 6 inches for a tap in eagle to to win the match. I think 6 and 4. So I mean, it was pretty. That was an incredible hole, and like you said, there definite risk rewards, plenty of balls in the water, but also some great eagle
and they
opportunities.
did it. They did a fabulous job, the ladies, of playing the contours of the greens. And when the greens get firm and fast, as they were, um, one of the you know key design um, statements of the course is that every green at RTJ, they're very big, but they play small. So each green has three very specific sections. And so if you hit it in the correct section and use the contours of the green, you can get the ball close. You can hit 18 out of 18 greens on a if you wanted to on a great day. Let's say somebody does. But if you're on the wrong section, the wrong one of these the wrong third of the
Mm-hmm.
green, you've got an almost impossible two putt. Like in
Mm.
some cases, and if you short side yourself, you're not getting up and down. So it does favor a ball striker that's good at the second shot, or somebody that has a really, really good short game and is creative. Because if you get out of place, those big greens start to get really small. And what you saw out there this week was a lot of great ball striking and great short games. And I think RTJ really showcased their skills.
Fantastic. Well, getting the cup back after losing three straight is exciting for the Americans. And I'm going to close with this. I actually really enjoy the women's game. I love watching it. I don't watch it as much just simply because I only have so much bandwidth for watching golf. And now we have Live, which I kind of like. I like the PGA Tour. I like them both. But I prefer to play golf to watch golf. I think any golfer would always
Mhm.
prefer to play golf. And you only have so much bandwidth. This is my idea. A lot of people think it's crazy. I would like to see more events where the men and women are playing the same venue. Put the women at 6,400 yards, put the men at 7,400 yards, have some team events that are men and women paired together. I think it could be a lot of fun. We've never seen that kind of come together. Some people think it's a terrible idea, I'm sure, but I just think there's too much talent on the women's side of golf for it not to be showcased as much as it is.
Well, I think you're spot on. I think it would be a lot of fun to do a tournament where you have, you know, at RTJ, for example, it can tip out over 7,500 yards. And we have, expansive tee options where like number 10, the ladies played it as a drivable par four this week, which is a lot of fun. And we have the options to do that on the 17th hole as well. But you could get the seniors together. You could get the ladies. You could get the PGA Tour or Live out there and create a course that is even for people of all different lengths. Now, what I loved about watching the LPGA Tour is that it was relatable. They were
Hmm.
playing a lot of the same tees that I play. They were hitting it oftentimes in similar places to where I hit it. I don't feel that way with the PGA Tour guys because they're playing a much longer course and they're hitting it way farther than I do. You can relate to it because you hit the ball a country mile.
I can't relate to it because I don't hit it nearly as straight as they do. I would have to hit 65% of the fairways to relate to that. But
but
yeah, I don't.
you really you hit the ball as far if not farther than most tour pros. But for the ladies, like the average golfer that plays the member tees at clubs like ours. So you take RTJ for example. The average member playing the blue tees only hits at 210 to 220 in the air with their driver. Um, I can hit it, 260, 270 on a good drive, sometimes a little farther. You hit it 330 to 360, but the to the average guy, most people play the wrong tees. So Golf Digest did a study, and so for that average member I was telling you about playing the blue tees, it'd be the equivalent of PGA Tour pros playing an 8,000-yard course.
Mm-hmm.
And the message of that was most people need to move up a box. It'll speed up the pace of play and it'll make it more
No
enjoyable.
question. No question.
I see members out there, guys in their 60s and 70s, hitting three wood and hybrid into all the par fours. And I'm like, come on, guys, you're killing yourself. That's not fun.
Yeah.
Move up to the senior tees and start hitting 8-iron and 7-iron into the greens the way they're supposed to be.
Well, the truth is, I enjoy going a box up or two from time to time and having to think through landing zones and hitting irons. And, I think that golf could be more fun if people wouldn't. The whole idea that the red tee box, for instance, is for women only is silly. There's a lot of people out there that would have a lot more fun playing golf if they played it at 5,500 yards as opposed to 6,500 yards. Learn to make some pars and birdies from those tee boxes before you move back.
You know what's a good
And
idea? What we did a couple years ago. Um, we painted all the red tee markers black, and we started calling them the forward tees, and then
right.
our super seniors started playing them. None of them wanted to be seen playing the red tees,
Yeah.
and so we just painted them black, and they started playing them, and they're having more fun, and the course is still attainable to them because it's a hard golf course for seniors because unlike what a lot of the courses you and I just played in Ireland, and we'll do a show on that. I'm guessing soon. You could roll the ball up to the green. Well, at RTJ, there are some openings, but a lot of times you got to fly the ball all the way there, and you got to have a little bit of height on it. And so it's a hard golf course for ladies and seniors and kids, and because it was built for pro tournaments. But I think when people move up a little bit and they can start approaching greens with an 8-iron instead of a hybrid, the game becomes more fun and the intent of the architecture is there. And a sign of great architecture is that you want to make the course more playable for the everyday member and guest, and you want it to play tougher for the pros and good amateurs.
That's
And
right.
you do that by having options off the tee and by pinching landing areas. So for guys like you that can fly your 3-wood 300 yards, we'll pinch, we pinch every hole between like 300 and 330. Or if you're a really good player and you want to fly the bunker and hit a speed slot and get extra roll, you better hit it perfectly and you better hit it on line or else
That's
you're going
right.
to end up, in trouble. But those are all.
Well,
But those are out of play for the good player, for the everyday player.
well, Rob, thank you for the insight to the Solheim Cup. I hope that folks watched it on TV. It was a lot of fun to watch, and I'm sure it was even more fun to be there. I look forward to playing RTJ next month. Thank you for listening. If you're not already, please subscribe, leave a review. It helps us with algorithms to get this show in front of more eyeballs and more listeners. Give us a good rating. The more listeners we get, the more good ratings we get, the more we can invest in bringing you great content. Also, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Golf and Politics. and on X at Golf Politics Pod. Thanks so much for listening. Hey!